All right. So today on the chapters, I have Aleatha Romig, USA Today and New York Times bestselling author. And thank you so much for taking out some time because I know you are busy working on several books right now.
I am, but thanks for having me.
So you got Dusk is your book that's coming out around Thanksgiving. And that's, is that book one in a trilogy I think I saw?
It is. Dusk is book one in the Dangerous Web trilogy. I have an overall series called Sparrow Webs, and Sparrow Webs is made up of, now it's going to be 4 different trilogies. Oh, wow. So the first 3 trilogies are already out, and this is the final trilogy.
Wow. So how long did it take you to write all the different trilogies?
The Secrets, which is the first book, came out a little over 2 years ago. So I've been writing in the same world for about 2.5 years.
Wow. That's awesome. And your first book, that came out in 2011. So Consequences, that was ahead of, that was pretty early on in the whole thing.
It was. It wasn't like, I think the first year where indies really popped up was either 9 or 10, but I definitely was in the early rush, and I think it made all the difference in the world.
Yeah. And so what was your motivator? What made you decide to take the leap and write? Or had you been doing it for forever?
I was a dental hygienist for about 30 years.
Wow.
Mother of 3. The story is kind of fun, kind of whatever. 2008, I don't know if anybody remembers, but the economy dropped, and my husband lost his job. He started working nights because our youngest son is autistic, and we were going to lose insurance. So he had to work because if our son went uninsured for 30 days, he could be uninsurable. So he started working at Meijer, which is a big box store, kind of like Walmart, and working overnight. Well, at the same time, our oldest son had left for Purdue University, and our daughter was getting ready to go to Hanover College. So we had all this going on. I ended up being home alone, like in 2009, at night, with just our youngest son, who is awesome, but he at the time I was probably under 10, going to bed by 8:30. So I went from a family of 5 with my older kids' friends over all the time and people here, just nothing. So I thought, why don't I've always wanted to write something, I'll write a story. And I never intended for it to go out. I never intended for anything to happen to it. I thought maybe my mom would read it, I didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know it would end up on over 1 million e-readers someday.
That is so amazing. Wow. So when did you become full-time author?
2013, right before my 3rd book came out, because Consequences, I actually first published it through Vanity Publisher. In 2012, I got my rights back and released Truth, which is the 2nd book of that series. In 2013, because I was still working full-time, so my books were coming once a year. Right before Convicted came out, I decided I couldn't do both. So I stopped being a hygienist and I became a full-time author.
Wow. So how many books do you have now?
I think, and I know I should know this off the top of my head, I think Dawn is 36 or 37.
Wow. And I was noticing too, you've got a lot that are in foreign print.
I do. Yes. I couldn't even tell you all the languages off the top of my head, but it's so fun to see your stuff written in the foreign language.
That's really cool. That's awesome. So what is Dusk? What's happening in Dusk? Without spoiling anything.
Well, just for an overall of the Sparrow Webs, book 1, which is Secrets, is free everywhere. So if anyone wants to start it. But when I wrote Web of Sin, which is the first trilogy, I had no idea it was going to expand out into 12 books. But kind of as a just overall, my anti-hero or hero in the first trilogy is the kingpin of Chicago. He runs Chicago's underground, the mafia there. And he was in the military, and in the military, he met 3 men from the Chicago area. They met in basic, and then they ended up serving together. And they all came back after the military and took over Chicago. So I didn't intend to have it where each man got his own trilogy, but that's what happened. So the first trilogy is about the main person. His name's Sterling Sparrow. And then each trilogy since has been about one of the men and their love interest.
Okay.
So, and each trilogy is a complete story for that couple. But now the couples still keep showing up because they're all together. So in this last trilogy, I have all 3 of the first couples plus this couple. And honestly, the exciting kind of fun thing is that this couple is married. So they were in the first series.
Oh, nice.
So it's kind of, it's different because it's not like he's meeting her and he's wooing her or whatever.
Right.
They've been married for, gosh, like 9 years. So
Okay.
I've never really written a story about a married couple, so it's been very interesting to keep it, exciting and new and what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, so really you could read any of the trilogies on their own, but they make the most sense if you start with Web of Sin, go to Tangled Web, and it says this on Amazon, it has them in order, and then Web of Desire, and now Dangerous Web. So, and if people want to binge, they can binge from the very beginning and do all of them, because this is the final trilogy.
And you, if I'm not mistaken, you had I don't know what they call it, like a world, like where other authors got to write in it.
I had a Kindle world.
How was that?
It was really interesting. It was for my infidelity series, which was really big after Consequences. Knox Dimitri and Charlie Collins are the two people in it. As a matter of fact, I just put this all into a box set. But yeah, it was really neat. I invited the authors for the first round, so there were a lot of people I knew, and I read all their stories. And a lot of them are still out there. So, I mean, the problem is they don't say Infidelity World on them anymore.
Oh,
so it's really hard to, figure out who they all are. But as an example, Pam Godwin wrote in it. I mean, it was just so neat to see them take like some of my side characters and do things with them, or just not even really use any of my characters, but just use my world that I created and put people in it. So it was really, I thought it was awesome.
I've seen that happen a couple of times. I just think that's such a really neat concept, because, it's like almost like a TV series where you could just take it any different direction, based on, mention one person one time, and all of a sudden that person can have a story and you didn't realize that they had a deep backstory.
Yeah, exactly. And they couldn't do any of my main characters because I own the rights to them, but they could do other people along the way. And I think by the time it ended, I think there were over 40 stories in it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's got to be feel really cool for you. I mean, it was your brainchild, and it just kind of, and people loving it the way they do.
I wish that Amazon wouldn't have done away with it. I said a little earlier when we were talking that I'm kind of a one-man person. I mean, I'm not. My husband does a lot, but I don't have a team to be able to publish those on, I just don't have the energy or the time. I have a wonderful editor, Lisa Aurora, let's see her last name. And she's been with me since my 4th book.
Oh, wow.
So I've had her forever. And I just love her dearly, and she always gets me in when she needs to. And also covers. I have made a couple of my covers. My husband's made a couple of my covers, but for the most part, I use other cover designers.
Yeah. It's I did photography with my mom, and so I originally was doing my own covers, and now I'll use Amy Q. I absolutely adore her, so she'll do some for me, whether it's just an original or using one of her pre-made, because it's I think that they have the eye to know what's marketable. What looks good to me doesn't necessarily look good to everybody else.
Well, and I am known for my object covers, so
yes.
Because I'm an object cover person, it's hard to make them. I use Kelly Dennis from Cover by Design, and she's amazing, and she's done my whole Infidelity series. She's done all the Sparrow Webs. So basically all of my object covers she's done, except for the Consequences series in the beginning. Yeah. And she has a great way of just making things, really mush together and look good.
Yeah. So, hot topic, the election. Yes. I know that I know where you stand politically, and I'm not asking you to but I know that you were volunteering at the polls, and I know that was I know that there were a need for, at least here in Texas, I know they were saying they needed volunteers and stuff like that. So what was that experience like for you?
It was amazing. I volunteered pretty early on. I contacted my party and said, hey, if you need anybody, I work from home, so I can work this out. I expected election day to be kind of crazy. It wasn't, but I worked we have early voting here in Indiana. Okay. So in our county, and I think it's statewide, but in our county, you could vote at our county seat, I think the whole month of October. But there was only one location. And so my husband and I have voted there for years, so we went there anyway just to get our votes done. Mm-hmm. But then the week before, or actually I think it was 10 days before Election Day, we opened up 5 satellite the election board, opened up 5 satellite locations. So I worked in one of those locations on 2 different days of early voting. And those days were packed. I mean, it was, they started at 10 in the morning, we closed at 7, and it was nonstop. We had 10 machines, and we would run over 1,000 people through, which for Indiana is pretty big.
Wow.
And I mean, and it was just a really awesome experience. And I mean, I think that Indiana handled the whole polls well as far as COVID. You know, I mean, everybody was expected to wear a mask. We all wore our masks. I had some N95 masks that a friend gave me, so I felt good about that. But it was, I mean, it was just a fun experience. It was fun seeing people because I work from home now, and I used to be a hygienist in this area. So people were coming in and they were like, "Oh my gosh, how are you?" You know, it was election day was not as busy. We actually had 18 machines, and we ended up running about 900 people through, but the day was longer. It was 6 in the morning to 6 at night. So we had some lulls in there, which I just wasn't expecting. But I think it was because we had such great turnout for early voting.
Right. And I think that's what it was here too. I think there was a big turnout for early voting. I know my husband and I did early voting, and, you know, mainly because I was afraid that it was just going to be so packed, you know, on election day. And I was like, I don't want to deal with that, you know. And I think it's you know, the only political thing that I have posted on Facebook was just that I was amazed at the voter turnout across the board.
Oh, I agree.
I think that this year proved the votes count. It absolutely matters.
So,
yeah. And so, like, typically in a normal non-pandemic year, I know you do a lot of signings.
I miss signings. I do miss signings.
Yeah.
I miss seeing the readers, and I also miss seeing the other authors. I mean, you know, there was a big group of us that started like in 13 at these signings, and for a while we were seeing each other literally every month. I mean, all over the country. We'd run into the same people over and over, and you got to be good friends with them. And I mean, we're still good friends, but we're just not seeing each other, you know, and everybody's busy. So I miss a lot of people.
Yeah. So did you have several signings this year you were going to be doing before the pandemic that you had to cancel, or?
I was going to do, yes, Books by the Bridge in New York. That's rescheduled for next June, I think, or May. I don't know. I'd have to look at my calendar. But again, I don't even know if that's going to happen.
Right.
Book Bonanza. And that will, I mean, that's rescheduled for, I think it's June next year.
June, yeah.
And then Shameless. And I don't know if that's been rescheduled or not. And that's in Orlando. And were those the only 3 I was doing? Those, I think, were the only 3. I was supposed to this coming February be in Australia.
Oh, wow.
And I canceled that earlier with the pandemic. And I mean, I'm pretty sure Australia doesn't want us right now. So I don't think I don't think there'll be any American authors over there.
Yeah. So how much do you figure you've been writing during the pandemic? I mean, is it, I mean, 3 books? I mean, was a whole trilogy done during the pandemic, or?
This trilogy, definitely, yes. I also wrote a thriller that may not see the light of day for a long time. I gave it to my agent to try to sell instead of self-publish it. And she wants me to do some changes to it, which I'm open to, but I was like, I got to get this trilogy done first. So once I get the trilogy done, then I can work on it again for a while. So I wrote that, and then I wrote a bunch of shorts, like we were going to talk about.
Right.
I wrote a short that is actually a prologue. It's not a prologue. Totally lost the word. Prequel. It's a prequel to DUSK. And it's called Danger's First Kiss. It first appeared in, and it is currently in Dark Fairy Tales with some other authors, and it's a modern day Cinderella story. It's going to be a free novella out there, and hopefully that people will pick up, and then they'll want to come into DUSK.
Nice. So you did. So I'm gonna hold the book up again.
Yeah.
This was the Bookworm Box anthology, One More Step, and so all of us had the task of taking one line and seeing where it went from there. And so you had a story in here, and I know that it, you know, you did really good promoting your story ahead of the release, you know, to where, you know, people were commenting. I was seeing stuff about your short story, you know, there, any of the reviews, you know, people talking about it, which I thought, my gosh, you were on it. And so obviously it turned out really good because you've got this you're on pre-order.
I do. I had my story in One More Step is called The Deal, and it's a whole new world. It's actually set in New Orleans. So
nice.
Maybe, I could come visit you and your family while you're
there.
there.
You go.
But yeah, so it's set in New Orleans, and it's all new people. And coming out in May will be The Devil's Deal, or just Devil's Deal. And it will be, not May, it'll be the full length story of what that mini story is.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And is it going to be a standalone, or do you think that one's going to expand into a trilogy as well?
I don't think it'll be a trilogy. I don't know for sure it'll be a standalone. I'm kind of playing it by ear. I want to see where it goes and what happens. I mean, it might be a duet. It might be a standalone. Honestly, I don't have it written on the blurb because I don't know yet. I haven't written it.
Yeah.
I still have to wait and see. I kind of love my cliffhangers.
Do you? And that's so. I was reading some of because I have not read Consequences. I remember back in 13, 14, 15, trigger warnings were like the big, and so there's actually been a couple of books that were recommended to me, and then people were like, oh, wait a second, but you're you. Yeah, maybe not, but I know that like that one's a pretty dark one, isn't it? The Consequences.
It is. It was pretty much. It's one of the first dark romances. I mean, so dark romance wasn't really a thing until C.J. Roberts, myself, and a couple other ones.
Roberts.
So we not to say, oh, look at us go, but we did kind of start the dark romance. As a matter of fact, at the time, I had a couple publishers look at Consequences, and they were like, oh, we'd love this, but can you change this, 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 and this? And I said, no, I can't. I'm not making it like all your other stories. The reason Consequences did well is because it was unique at the time.
Right.
Now, the interesting thing is, Consequences, all my current books are written in first person, dual POV. Consequences is written in third person, and it is all fade to black.
Oh, is it really?
So there isn't all the stuff that people think is in there. And I mean, I've gotten emails from people who are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that, Tony did this. And I said, did he? And they're like, well, yes, and poor Claire. And I'm like, show me where it says he did that. And I mean, they'll come back and they're like, well, it doesn't really say it, but it happened. Well, yeah, you probably do, but
right.
It's not.
Right.
So yeah, so that kind of makes it a little unique too.
So Dusk comes out on November 24th, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
November 24th. And is it going to be Amazon, or is it going to be available everywhere?
Oh, it's available everywhere, and it's available for pre-order. And then the second book in the trilogy is Dark, and it is coming out January 5th. And then the final one will be Dawn, and it comes out on February 16th. So,
well, you definitely have a really amazing, loyal fan base, which is really cool. And, that's definitely a testament to your writing and keeping them engaged and engaging with them.
I enjoy my readers. I've got some great readers, and hopefully one day we'll get to see them again.
Yes, I know. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. And everybody, go pre-order Dusk and the other ones, because they're all on pre-order right now, correct?
They are. Dusk, Dark, and Dawn. There you go.
There you go. Dusk, Dark, and Dawn. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye.